In the intense and theatrical world of WWE, where wrestlers constantly battle to carve out their own identity, there are a few names that fans will never forget, simply because they were unlike anyone else. These individuals stood out not just for their appearance, fighting style, or unique charisma, but for their extraordinary journeys and the unforgettable marks they left in the ring. They were true anomalies, one-of-a-kind performers who could never be replicated or replaced. Dustin Thomas, the legless warrior, who took the wrestling world by storm with unbreakable spirit. Dustin Thomas may not be a household name to mainstream wrestling fans, but within the independent wrestling scene, he's a symbol of grit, resilience, and the sheer will to defy all odds. Though he only began his professional career in early 2019, Dustin quickly caught the attention of the wrestling community, not just for his unconventional style, but for the extraordinary story behind the man himself. Born in Denver, Dustin lost both of his legs at the age of 3 due to a tragic accident. From that moment on, his life took a completely different path. But instead of surrendering to circumstances, he held tight to a burning passion for professional wrestling, a dream that, to most, seemed completely out of reach. After all, who would ever imagine that someone without legs could step into a wrestling ring, let alone compete on equal footing with trained professionals? Yet, it was exactly this unwavering spirit that turned the impossible into reality. Everything changed in April 2019 when Dustin received an invitation to wrestle at a Game Changer Wrestling (GCW) event. Facing off against Tony Deppen, Dustin didn't just impress, he blew the internet away. It wasn't merely the visual of a legless wrestler in action that stunned viewers, but the skill, creativity, and raw talent he brought to the ring. One move in particular stood out, the NUB-19, Dustin's brilliant adaptation of the iconic 619 maneuver. Developed entirely by him, the move was both inventive and flawlessly executed, earning him high praise from fans and critics alike. That breakout performance opened doors for Dustin to become a recurring name at GCW events. Riding that momentum, Dustin was soon invited to compete in AEW's inaugural Double or Nothing pay-per-view, participating in the high-stakes Casino Battle Royale. Though his appearance was brief, the impact he made was undeniable. From there, he continued carving his path across the independent circuit, even picking up wins against seasoned veterans like Joey Janela and KTB. Dustin Thomas is crafting a legacy unlike any other. He doesn't need legs to prove his toughness. His courage, passion, and refusal to give up are what make him unforgettable. Could the future see Dustin returning to AEW, or even stepping into a WWE ring? That remains to be seen. But if there's anyone capable of breaking through every barrier and rewriting the rules, it's Dustin Thomas. Microman, the inspiring tiny legend. From the earliest days of professional wrestling, smaller athletes were often seen as sideshow attractions rather than serious competitors. During the carnival era and in classic wrestling territories, mini-wrestlers were typically used for comedic relief. But times have changed. In recent years, the wrestling community has begun to genuinely recognize the skill and talent of those with unique physiques. Nowhere is this more evident than in Mexico, the heartland of lucha libre. Here, smaller wrestlers aren't just respected, they're celebrated. And no one embodies this shift better than Microman, the pint-sized sensation who's been shaking arenas since his official debut in 2017. So, what makes Microman truly one of a kind? Not only is he a highly skilled professional wrestler with remarkable technique, but he also holds a record no one else has come close to. He's the shortest wrestler to ever compete professionally. Standing at just 3 feet 3 inches tall, about 1 meter, Microman might initially draw curiosity due to his size, but he quickly wins over audiences with his agility, creativity, and undeniable charisma. Every time he steps into the ring, it becomes an unforgettable moment, whether he's facing fellow minis in CMLL or taking on larger competitors across the independent scene. If you've never seen him wrestle, you're missing out on a true modern marvel of lucha libre. At the legendary Arena Mexico, the crowd erupts every time Microman appears. Whether he's locked in an intense battle with longtime rival Zacharias de Empirico, or putting his iconic mask on the line in a high-stakes match against Shamuel, he never fails to keep fans on the edge of their seats. Microman's fame isn't limited to Mexico. He's also made waves with American audiences during appearances for GCW, including a memorable match with the eccentric Danhausen. While he may not be a full-time star in the US, with CMLL expanding its partnership with AEW, there's always a chance we could see Microman walk through the forbidden door to a thunderous ovation from thousands of fans. Microman doesn't need height to stand tall. His talent, heart, and fighting spirit are more than enough to earn him a lasting place in the history of professional wrestling. Miles Bourne, the hearing-impaired wrestler making his mark in NXT. If you've been following NXT regularly, chances are you've noticed something unique about Miles Bourne, even though WWE has never explicitly highlighted it on television. Still, over time, his teammates in the No Quarter Catch crew have subtly referenced it. What sets Miles apart from nearly everyone else in professional wrestling is the fact that he's hard of hearing. Born with a condition caused by pulmonary hypertension, Miles has dealt with significant hearing loss since childhood, a challenge that would seem insurmountable for anyone chasing a career in a field as intense and chaotic as pro wrestling. But instead of letting it hold him back, Miles Bourne has used his hearing impairment as fuel. From a young age, he learned to read lips to communicate with the world around him. And in the ring, that skill has become a rare advantage, allowing him to adapt, react, and perform without relying on verbal cues or sound. To some, that might seem extraordinary. But to Miles, it's simply the only way he knows how to live, fight, and chase his dream. That resilience and adaptability have not only helped him survive in the competitive world of NXT, they've made him stand out. His performances alongside the No Quarter Catch crew prove one thing loud and clear: hearing loss doesn't diminish his talent. If anything, it makes his accomplishments even more impressive. With the momentum he's building, it's only a matter of time before Miles makes his way to the main roster on Raw or SmackDown. When that day comes, Miles Bourne could very well become the first hearing-impaired wrestler in WWE history to capture a major championship, whether that's the Intercontinental title, United States Championship, or even the coveted WWE Championship itself. But regardless of what the future holds, Miles is currently sharpening his craft at the WWE Performance Center while gaining experience across other promotions like TNA, GCW, and the legendary Bloodsport event hosted by Josh Barnett, where he once had a memorable match against New Japan's Royce Isaacs. Miles Bourne might not yet be a household name, but his journey is living proof that with passion, perseverance, and grit, no obstacle is too great to overcome. Giant Gonzalez, the towering giant who reached the sky. In a world filled with towering figures like the Big Show, the Great Khali, and the legendary Andre the Giant, there was still one man who made everyone look up in awe: Giant Gonzalez. Not only was he one of the tallest superstars to ever step foot in a WWE ring, but he was also among the tallest individuals ever recorded worldwide. During his peak, he was billed at a staggering 8 feet tall, approximately 2.44 meters. While that number may have been slightly exaggerated for showmanship, his actual height of 7 feet 7 inches, around 2.31 meters, was still jaw-dropping. Standing next to anyone, Gonzalez effortlessly commanded attention with his unmatched physical presence. Before stepping into the world of professional wrestling, Gonzalez pursued a career in basketball. With his incredible build, he was a natural force in the paint and even caught the eye of the Atlanta Hawks, one of the NBA's renowned franchises. However, his time on the court was cut short due to limitations in stamina and mobility. Even so, it was clear he wasn't just a tall figure. He had an athletic foundation that made him stand out in any arena. The turning point came when Gonzalez transitioned to professional wrestling, making his debut with WCW in the late 1980s. Almost instantly, he was presented as a modern-day Andre the Giant, an unstoppable colossus who could crush any opponent. When he eventually joined the WWF, now WWE, the company amplified his mystique by outfitting him in a skin-tight bodysuit designed to mimic a muscular anatomy, making him look even more surreal. But what kept him from reaching Andre's legendary status wasn't his size. It was his lack of charisma and in-ring fluidity, qualities that can't simply be taught or replicated. Still, Gonzalez carved out a lasting legacy with his high-profile clash against The Undertaker at WrestleMania 9. That match remains one of the most talked-about moments of his career, a showdown where fans saw The Undertaker's iconic WrestleMania streak nearly broken in only his second appearance on the grand stage. Though the bout was far from a technical masterpiece, it was enough to cement Gonzalez as one of the most formidable opponents The Undertaker ever faced. Unfortunately, his massive frame eventually took a toll on his health. By 1995, Gonzalez was forced to retire from wrestling due to medical complications. He lived a quiet life away from the spotlight until his passing in 2010. Though his career was brief, Giant Gonzalez remains a one-of-a-kind figure in WWE history, a true giant, both literally and symbolically. Zack Goen, the one-legged man who defied the odds in WWE. If you were watching WWE during the early days of the Ruthless Aggression era, the name Zack Goen probably brings back a wave of powerful emotions. His story wasn't just another chapter in sports entertainment. It was a living testament to resilience in the face of adversity. Zack lost his left leg to cancer when he was just 8 years old. For most people, a tragedy like that would be enough to shatter any dream. But for Zack, it became the beginning. He refused to let his physical limitations silence his passion. Years later, once he was grown, Zack set out to become a professional wrestler, not to gain pity, but to prove that he deserved a spot in the ring just like anyone else. The road he chose was far from easy. Training was one challenge. Convincing others to believe in his abilities was an even greater one. But that persistence paid off in 2003 when WWE, the biggest wrestling company in the world, took notice. Interestingly, WWE initially approached him by mistake, thinking he was a different one-legged wrestler. Still, Zack landed a contract, and once he got his shot, he made sure no one would ever doubt him again. Zack made an immediate impact after his debut. In a memorable storyline, he appeared alongside Stephanie McMahon and went head-to-head with Vince McMahon himself, the chairman of WWE. Things escalated quickly, and soon, Zack found himself squaring off against the Big Show, one of the most dangerous and physically dominant superstars of that era. Despite wrestling with only one leg, and never using a prosthetic, Zack wowed crowds and colleagues alike with his athleticism, fearlessness, and high-flying maneuvers. Every match he competed in was a spectacle of heart, courage, and daredevil determination. He didn't just wrestle, he inspired. However, the reality of WWE's demanding environment soon set in. While Zack's debut was groundbreaking, the company began to realize that the physical toll of full-time programming might be too much in the long run. His appearances gradually decreased, and not long after, Zack parted ways with WWE. But that wasn't the end of his wrestling journey. Zack went on to compete for various promotions including TNA, Ring of Honor, and even the offbeat Juggalo Championship Wrestling. As recently as 2024, Zack Goen, with one leg, an iron will, and an unbreakable heart, remains a symbol of perseverance and fighting spirit in professional wrestling. Zack's story is more than just a wrestling career. It's proof that with enough grit and passion, no obstacle is too great to overcome. Happy Humphrey, the one-of-a-kind giant. Happy Humphrey may not be a familiar name to modern wrestling fans, but for those who admire the early days of professional wrestling, he remains a truly unique figure. Prominent during the territorial era of the 1950s and early 1960s, Humphrey wasn't just an in-ring spectacle. He was a major draw, playing a vital role in attracting crowds to wrestling events of that time. What immediately set Humphrey apart was his unimaginable size. At the peak of his career, he weighed an astounding 802 pounds, roughly 364 kilograms. This extraordinary weight made him more than just a curiosity. It turned him into a powerful marketing tool. Promoters often treated him like a secret weapon, sending him to different territories for surprise appearances that helped boost ticket sales and generate buzz wherever he went. Though he couldn't perform the flashy, athletic maneuvers that modern stars are known for, fans back then weren't looking for technical brilliance. They wanted something different, someone who could leave an unforgettable impression the moment they entered the ring. And with Humphrey, a proud son of Georgia, that sense of awe was always guaranteed. He didn't need to fly through the air or lock opponents in submissions. His sheer presence was enough to command silence and attention. One of the most telling examples of his appeal was his showdown with Haystacks Calhoun, which packed Madison Square Garden during a Capitol Wrestling event promoted by Vince McMahon Sr. at the time. Few could claim to sell out such an iconic venue, but Humphrey did just that. In addition to standard matches, he took part in wild stunts like arm wrestling bears or locking up with a young Harley Race, who would later become a legend in his own right. While he might not be mentioned as often as other legends, Happy Humphrey's legacy still lingers in wrestling history. Though he's yet to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, that doesn't mean he isn't worthy. His impact deserves proper recognition, and it wouldn't be surprising to see his contributions honored more formally in the future. What's even more remarkable is that Humphrey's name gained renewed attention after his retirement, not for his wrestling feats, but for a groundbreaking personal achievement. He was once recognized by the Guinness World Records for the greatest weight loss ever recorded. At one point, he shed an astonishing 570 pounds, about 258 kilograms, reducing his weight to just 232 pounds, or around 105 kilograms. It was a remarkable journey that proved Happy Humphrey wasn't just a larger-than-life presence in the ring, but also a man of extraordinary willpower and resilience to the very end. Carrie Von Eric. One of a kind, irreplaceable. Carrie Von Eric didn't always wrestle with one foot. In the early years of his career, he was the very image of a rising star. A chiseled physique, a handsome face, impressive in-ring skills, and a magnetic presence that made him impossible to ignore. With full physical strength and all limbs intact, Carrie quickly rose to stardom in Dallas during the mid-1980s. Alongside his brothers, Carrie helped turn his father's promotion, World-Class Championship Wrestling, into one of the most powerful and influential wrestling territories of the time. The legendary feud between the Von Eric family and their eternal rivals, the Fabulous Freebirds, became the talk of the wrestling world and a defining memory for fans of that era. But the infamous Von Eric curse always loomed in the background, and in June 1986, it struck Carrie hard. A devastating motorcycle accident left him with such severe injuries that doctors had no choice but to amputate one of his feet. For most, that would have been the end of an athletic career. But Carrie was different. Without ever making his condition public, Carrie quietly wore a prosthetic foot, hidden beneath his wrestling boot, and returned to the ring without missing a beat. His charisma never faded. His athleticism remained intact. And incredibly, he not only carried on, he excelled. Before the accident, Carrie had already captured the prestigious NWA World Heavyweight Championship, a title that only a select few have ever held. After the accident, he continued to perform at such a high level that even WWF, now WWE, took notice and signed him. Rebranded as the Texas Tornado, Carrie joined the WWE roster and made an immediate impact, winning the Intercontinental Championship, one of the last major milestones of his wrestling career. But competing with one foot didn't just demand grit, it came at a painful cost. To cope with the chronic physical pain, Carrie increasingly relied on painkillers. Over time, those pills didn't just numb his body, they dulled his spirit, especially as he endured the heartbreaking deaths of three brothers, David, Mike, and Chris. The weight of personal loss, coupled with the immense pressure of hiding his secret, slowly wore him down. In 1993, at just 33 years old, Carrie Von Eric tragically passed away, leaving behind a legacy tinged with sorrow and awe. Yes, his story ended in heartbreak. But what Carrie Von Eric left behind remains immortal, a legacy that proves no tragedy, no injury, no hardship can break the will of a determined heart. He may have lost a foot, but his spirit, courage, and fire inside never wavered. Crazy Steve, the legally blind wrestler who refuses to back down. You might find yourself asking the obvious question: how can someone who's legally blind become a professional wrestler? The short answer is, no one really knows for sure. But if there's ever been a living, breathing example of pushing beyond every limit, that would be Crazy Steve, the man who has captivated audiences across the globe with jaw-dropping performances in TNA, AAA, and many other promotions. Steve is legally blind, meaning he's not completely without sight, but what he does see is nothing more than blurry shapes, lacking clarity, depth, or detail. This means that every movement, every strike, even his awareness of the space around him, things most wrestlers rely on to position themselves or react, becomes a serious challenge. Yet despite that, Steve not only manages to wrestle, he competes at an impressively high level. His name is closely tied to some of the most unique stables in wrestling, like the Menagerie and especially Decay, where he was more than just a member. He became a standout figure thanks to his character work and distinct presence. Alongside the legendary Abyss, he captured the TNA World Tag Team Championship, and later went on to win the Impact Digital Media title, proving his worth in both tag team and singles competition. Today, Crazy Steve continues to perform in AAA, one of Mexico's most prominent wrestling promotions. And what's more exciting is that AAA has recently become part of WWE's ecosystem following a major acquisition. So technically speaking, Steve is now part of the WWE umbrella. Could that mean appearances on Raw, SmackDown, or even NXT in the near future? It's still uncertain, but if it happens, no one would be shocked. Because for years, Crazy Steve has shown the world that vision doesn't define a wrestler's value. Whether in the US or Mexico, whether fighting in near total darkness or under the brightest lights, he always finds a way to shine, through sheer grit, unshakable will, and an unrelenting love for the sport. Gregory Iron, the wrestler who refused to let cerebral palsy define him. When it comes to stories of overcoming adversity, Gregory Iron stands as one of the most powerful examples of unwavering determination. Born with cerebral palsy, a neurological disorder that severely affects motor function, Gregory could have easily accepted a life of limitations. Instead, he chose to chase a dream that many thought impossible, becoming a professional wrestler. And through relentless effort, he made that dream real, step by step. Although he has yet to sign a contract with WWE, at least for now, Gregory has built an impressive reputation across the independent wrestling scene. He's competed in well-known promotions like Chikara, Pro Wrestling Ohio, and Game Changer Wrestling. One of the standout moments of his career was a victory over Johnny Gargano, who would later become a key member of WWE's DIY. For Gregory, that wasn't just a match. It was a turning point that proved he belonged among the rising names of the indie circuit. What makes Gregory Iron stand out isn't just his condition, it's his actual talent inside the ring. His success doesn't come from brute strength, but from mental toughness, adaptability, and a tireless work ethic. More than anything, he's carved out a space for himself that's impossible to ignore. That individuality became even more striking when he joined forces with Zack Goen, a one-legged wrestler, to form the tag team Handicapped Heroes. What seemed like an unlikely pairing became one of the most unique teams in wrestling. In 2012, at Pro Wrestling Ohio, the two met and soon after captured the company's tag team championship, a victory that was as inspiring as it was unexpected. As of March 2025, Gregory is still wrestling on the independent scene. He continues to compete, proving that the door to WWE, or any major promotion, is far from closed. Could we one day see him on Raw, SmackDown, or NXT? No one can say for certain, but it's far from impossible. No matter where his journey leads, Gregory Iron will always be remembered as a symbol of courage. Someone who dared to dream, took action, and stepped into the ring even when the world told him he couldn't. Kyle O'Reilly, a martial arts master with an iron will who overcame illness. When it comes to diabetes, many might consider it a chronic but manageable condition, as long as one sticks to a proper diet and lifestyle. However, if you're a professional wrestler, the story becomes far more complicated. Grueling training routines, constant travel, and the pressures of performing make managing blood sugar levels a true challenge. That's the reality Kyle O'Reilly had to face from the very beginning of his wrestling journey. Diagnosed with diabetes at a young age, Kyle never let the condition derail his dream. Instead of giving in, he chose to confront it head-on. Through unwavering discipline, relentless determination, and a fierce drive to succeed, he not only maintained a strong physical condition but also developed a distinct wrestling style built on real martial arts. Kyle isn't just a wrestler, he's a trained expert in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which elevated his in-ring skills to another level. Blending Jiu-Jitsu with a fast-paced modern wrestling approach, Kyle quickly made a name for himself in top promotions like Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, Ring of Honor, and New Japan Pro Wrestling, where he captured major championships. At ROH and PWG in particular, he reached the pinnacle by becoming a world champion, a feat few achieve, especially while managing a condition that requires constant monitoring and care. In 2017, Kyle made his WWE debut through the NXT brand and became a key member of the Undisputed Era, one of the most dominant factions in NXT history. Alongside Adam Cole, Roderick Strong, and Bobby Fish, they captured the NXT Tag Team Championships 3 times and turned Kyle into a fixture in high-caliber tag matches. Today, Kyle is competing in AEW and has reunited with some of his former allies. While diabetes is still part of his daily life, it has never slowed him down. He remains a top contender for major titles, from the Trios Championship to the coveted TNT belt. Kyle O'Reilly is living proof that physical limitations can't stop a determined spirit, and his journey is far from over. Which wrestler impressed you the most from this list? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Wrestling Sphere so you never miss out on exciting WWE content every day.